welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you today on WJOPLP Newburyport at FM 96.3 on Channel 9 and on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and today I am just delighted to welcome Josh Faigen and Leslie Pasternack here. Josh is a resident of Newburyport. He's a very prolific playwright and a winner of National Playwriting Awards. His plays have been produced in cities across the country, including L.A., Buffalo, Boston, Portsmouth, and many others, including, of course, our own Newburyport. And he's here today to talk about the premiere of a brand new play he's written called A Modern Requiem, which will be performed on Saturday, April 5th at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., and Sunday, April 6th at 4 p.m. at the Space ZFDM Drums and Music in Amesbury. So, Josh, first of all, welcome. Thanks for taking time to visit the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
Happy to have you here. And he's here with Leslie Pasternack, who will act in and also is director of Josh's play. She's a theater maker and educator. She spent 15 years teaching theater history and acting at University of Texas at Austin, Northeastern, and also Muhlenberg College. Since 2019, she's taught acting, directing, and playwriting through her own studio, Lemon Punch Theater Lab, which is located in Durham, New Hampshire. She has a voluminous portfolio of directing and acting credits and an award-winning masked solo show called The Clean Room, which has been performed all over New England and also New York City. She's also collaborated with Josh before, including last year's popular and very well-received play called Aspect. So, Leslie, thank you so much for taking time to visit the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm just delighted.
Well, I'm delighted to have you both here and to learn more about this really intriguing sounding play. Well, I'd like to start by asking you to talk about the triangular love story involving Clara and Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms that I understand provided your inspiration for A Modern Requiem, including, in your answer, if you don't mind, some background about what the world of classical music was like at the time, how long it lasted, and what was, as you've described it, I'm quoting you, strange, about this affair. And Maeve, if you could show, we have a picture of the three of them, Brahms is in the middle, while Josh talks about their arrangement.
Well, first let me say that, yes, this particular love story, as it were, did provide inspiration. There were others as well. There's a whole lot of inputs to this. But the basic story, and let me also give credit, a lot of this is coming from a biography of Brahms that my good friend Jan Swafford wrote, composer and biographer. So I'm giving him credit for what I'm about to tell you by and large. But Robert Schumann and Clara Schumann, originally Clara Wieck, were married under difficult circumstances. Basically, Clara's father despised Robert Schumann, and so they had to kind of maneuver that. They were married, had 9 children, believe it or not. And at one point in... I should also say that Clara was a great pianist, and in fact, Clara's reputation as a performing pianist eclipsed all others in Europe at that time. We're talking about 1830s and 1840s. So amazingly, even though she was a woman performer, she was the star. Yeah. And she performed and toured all over. And of course, Robert Schumann, the great composer. At some point in their marriage, early in their marriage, it turns out that Robert, who was always had mental issues, became extremely ill. And we can maybe it was bipolar, we would call it today. But his symptoms got worse and worse. And he eventually died in an asylum. Just being completely just riddled with this terrible disease, whatever it ended up being. So, at one point, they invited the young Johannes Brahms, who was about 10 years younger than Clara, I think 10 years, yeah, to their house. He was, the young Brahms had made quite a reputation for himself as being the wunderkind of classical music. They didn't think of it as classical music then.
Yeah.
And Robert just wanted to meet the guy and see what was up. So he visited their house in Strasbourg and played some of his music one night. And both Robert and Clara just fell over themselves. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. And Robert immediately, for a number of reasons, but immediately in the ensuing weeks, actually, he was also a well-known music critic, and he published a very famous article saying that Brahms had inherited the mantle of Beethoven.
Wow, that's high praise.
It was.
Yeah.
Of course, it completely messed Brahms up for a long time. It's just like...
pressure.
In baseball, you don't want to be thought of as the next Babe Ruth.
Right.
You know, so...
Right.
And it was a lot of pressure.
It's a lot to live up to.
It was. In the meantime, it turns out that Clara and Robert had formed this particular attachment, this particular bond that we would think of as maybe romantic. Certainly it was intimate. And he became intimately involved with Clara and Robert's life, their household, their children. Even at one point, many years later, he actually contemplated having an affair with one of Clara's daughters, which is really weird.
Yeah. Woody Allen, Mia Farrow.
Yeah.
We won't even go there.
No, we won't.
But the strange part starts coming into focus.
It does, and it is Jan Swaffer's contention in this book, and we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But his thinking was that Robert, at some point, knew he was not going to live very long, and he probably expected Robert and Clara,
Johannes
and Clara, to be married, which at that point was the ultimate end point of and of course they never did, but they remained a part of each other's lives for the rest of their lives in very intimate ways. A single word from Clara on a new composition by Johannes, a single word would either send him ecstatically through the roof or make him depressed for a long time if it was a bad word.
Yeah.
But he sent her. They collaborated on all of his music, most of his music anyway. She was at many of the premieres. She actually performed some of the premieres. And the only part that, and this seems to be the part everybody focuses on, of course, is that did they ever? How can I put this? Share a bed.
Yes.
Share a bed.
The word consummate comes to mind.
Consummate.
Yes.
Fine. That's consummate. And nobody knows, and that's always like one of the great questions of history, and why I'm not sure. And I will just say that Brahms himself had a very difficult, a very problematic attitude towards sex. Mostly, again, we think because at an early age, 12 or 13, he grew up in Hamburg, and he was forced to earn money for his family. And the way he did it for several years was to play piano in a dockside brothel in the Hamburg docks.
Oh, interesting.
And it just must have been a shatteringly unpleasant and traumatizing experience.
Absolutely.
So it's we do know that he did frequent brothels his whole life, and yet he had no romantic attachments that included anything other than just platonic, a platonic sort of relationship. So I don't mean to be prurient about this. I just wanted to say that it's an important part of the story. Yeah. He and Clara did have a tempestuous relationship. At times they had arguments that lasted a year or more, where they would not write to each other or speak to each other. On the other hand, in general, because Clara basically worked herself to death eventually. She just toured constantly. So her 9 kids had difficult could have difficult lives, and Johannes was often there for them as well.
Interesting.
Financially wasn't really a problem. In the end, Brahms earned more money than he ever knew what he could possibly do with. But financially, but also emotionally, he would be there for her children. So it was maybe that was the epitome of a pure romantic relationship in the 1850s, 60s, and 70s. I don't know, but that's how it went anyway.
Well, that is an absolutely fascinating story. It has plot twist within plot twist within
It
plot
does,
twists. And sounds like what a movie that would make.
And it will come back again, that story. So we will see. I know of one other play that's in production now about that story specifically, and eventually some Hollywood person is going to say, well, this is good, we can use this.
Yeah. Well, now, you've said, Josh, that in your play, Modern Requiem, you're not going to retell the love story. That would be a very long play.
It would.
So tell us, how does that complicated, tumultuous love story you've just described, how does it inform your Requiem, and how do you integrate your words with the music of Brahms?
Yeah, I'm not a historian, and you may disagree with this, but I'm not a particularly good storyteller. But I do. Everything revolves around the music for me. The way I look at it, and I wanted these characters, and I say characters loosely. The actors' roles are not to recreate particular characters, but they do inhabit characters. Two of them, one named Clara, for Clara, and one named John for Johannes.
Okay.
So, I particularly love the idea, and still think of it as the fact that Robert had anticipated a future for Clara
that's
and
fascinating.
Johannes, as Robert in my story, who doesn't appear, is anticipating, and they go back to they both use him as their fulcrum. Even though the story is modern, it takes place, if it takes place anywhere. There's bits of it in Berlin, bits of it in Vienna, bits of it in Cleveland. But it always uses Robert as the remembrance of Robert as the fulcrum.
Interesting. So he's an offstage presence, but very much informs what's going on with...
In a way, yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Okay. Would it make sense to play a clip?
Yeah, let's do that.
Point?
I think we're going to play the clip from a scene. These aren't really scenes. I think of them more as, I don't know, movements, maybe.
You use the word meditation.
Meditations,
and
yeah.
that's actually a musical term that Liszt used for many of his pieces, and there was also this big fight between Brahms and Liszt, but that's another story. Anyway,
Your next play.
These are all monologues.
Okay.
And this one are all based around waltzes that Brahms wrote, four-handed waltzes that he really wrote for everyday amateur musicians to just throw up on the piano and sit down and play. So there's a discussion, I think, in this clip a little bit about four-handed piano playing.
So this segment is from Waltz, and you'll be seeing a lovely still photo of Leslie as we listen to it, and the Brahms work is Opus 39.
Waltz is from Opus 39, yeah.
So let's see if I can't get this up here.
Finally, the two players will need to hear the music the same way in order to be successful. Such a commitment must be made. Without this commitment, there can be no music, no passion, no love. The final requirement. When all goes right, four-handed music becomes the romantic ideal, the romance of the two. But wait! 2 people, 4 hands, 1 keyboard. There remains the strangest number, the outlier, the exotic, immediately apprehended, but never quite comprehended. 3, of course. Regrettably, nature did not provide human beings with 3 of anything. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 kidneys, for God's sake. 10 fingers. You can't even divide 10. by 3. And yet, there was always a simple solution to the problem, a thrilling solution, an obvious solution. A waltz.
I loved that. As I told you before the show, I was listening to the clip when you sent it to me. We got to the, it's a waltz, and I just burst out laughing out loud. So anyway, Josh, anything that you wanted to say more about this particular clip? And
This particular monologue actually has 3 parts to it. In the beginning, there's a discussion of how we know these numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, because they all apply in this case. 1 piano, 2 performers, 4 hands, and then we're left with the number 3. Mm-hmm. And 3 is the basis of the waltz, and and then the discussion of 4-handed piano playing, it's 4-handed piano playing is really interesting. Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate and reasonably intimate collaboration between 2 people. I mean, you're sitting there on the bench, your hands are overlapping, underlapping. You have to. Everybody's reaching over, and as I mentioned, and my wife Penny and I have played 4 hands. It's you look down and you really think, I see 4 hands. I can't quite remember which hands are mine, which hands are hers. Because they're all kind of in there, you know. So it's fun. It can be stressful, and it's not. You don't hear it performed that often. So it's just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you described your play as dealing with are themes, you said they were fundamental to the romantic sensibility. And I was hoping you could describe that sensibility and how it's evoked in the themes that you focus on in your play.
Well, I mentioned the themes, the 3 are love, grief, and time. And I think those are integral to the, what we call the romantic sensibility, at least when it comes to music. Mm-hmm. The romantic movement in music is very specific, greatly debated. Some people think that Beethoven's his late period, he was verging into the romantic. Mm-hmm. Clearly, Brahms was in the middle of it in a particular way. I'm sorry, Beethoven's Schubert then, mm-hmm. and then Brahms, and so there's always a discussion of that. So actually, let me, if I may, I brought, this is a quote I'm opening the show with, so if I could just read it real quick, because I think it's a good quote that's helpful. Okay. It says, music is the romantic of all the arts. One might almost say the only genuinely romantic one, for its sole subject is the infinite. Music discloses to us an unknown realm, a world that has nothing in common with the external sensual world that surrounds us, a world in which we leave behind us all definite feelings to surrender ourselves to an inexpressible longing. And that's from E.T.A. Hoffmann, who was really one of the first romantic writers, the movement in romantic European literature. So, and I think that expresses it pretty well. This direct link between music and emotions without any intervening brain power, mm-hmm. thought process. You know, that obviously love and obviously grief are 2 exceedingly powerful emotions, and I'm always interested in the way they relate to the idea of time, mm-hmm. because they're always, they exist in the present, in that you don't nothing happens. Emotions aren't happen. They don't follow a cause and effect relationship. Yeah. When you experience an emotion, it's time is not applicable. And I was always interested in that because I'm always interested in theories of time and how time works for us, manifest time for us, scientific time, and then there's musical time. Because if you think about it, in music, in our lives, we can never recreate the present. The present is instantaneous, you know, and we don't really understand why that is. The past already happened, the future is indeterminate. In music, you can recreate the present anytime you want. It's right there. It's like, okay, we're going to start on measure 27.
Right.
There it is. That present you
Right.
can recreate instantly, and I was always really interested in that.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense to you, Leslie?
Yes, I was going to say that I have a long relationship with Josh as a collaborator, a director, a performer, and sometimes just in your audience, and also talking about these ideas a lot. But I am not a specialist in music. I'm a theater historian and a performer. And so I also have sometimes served as kind of an interlocutor between Josh and the world.
That's a good word.
And so one of the things that I think is wonderful about Requiem, which was also wonderful last year about Aspects, is over the years, Josh has figured out ways to meld together music and the writing of characters' experiences with storytelling and with emotion in ways that he has always said he wants to use theater or writing of text in ways that move the audience in the way that we feel moved when we listen to a symphony or an opera. And early in our experiments and that you've done with various groups, and a lot of it in Newburyport, it seemed as if the frame of a play didn't help audiences be in receptive enough a space to listen almost with your whole body.
Interesting.
Because we kept looking for the linear narrative.
Right.
And
the plot.
Yes. And the breakthrough in recent years, but especially with the show Aspects last year, for one, it wasn't performed in a dedicated theater space. It was in a chapel in the cemetery. And that brought an audience in who were ready to receive in a completely different way. So this sense of I have to figure out the plot to get to the end was released. And coming back to your issue of time, Josh's compositions, which is really what they are, the combination of music and words, invite us to sit in the present of each moment as it unfurls and enjoy the sensuousness of that in a way that more traditional narrative-based linear plays don't set up that expectation. But we know from all the different kinds of interdisciplinary performances that people enjoy that audiences are capable of sitting through theater that is quote-unquote different. It was just about setting expectations in a way that was more, come on the journey with us. It's not a rush. Be in a space similar to if you would go to listen to Brahms. But we also invite the embodied human. The other theme in what Josh speaks about a lot with me when he asks me to direct is he always says, and I think you're wrong and you overstate it here, like, I don't know anything about living in a body. I don't understand. Talk to them about how to use their bodies. And yet, if there is a theme that goes through all your writing, it's how strong emotion manifests in the body. It's sublime emotion in particular, how the physical limitations of the human instrument, if you will, or on a bad day, the meat puppet, right? How it copes with all of this emotion and with abstract ideas. You know, that conflict between the sublime and the limitations of our own body runs through so much of the work. And so part of my function as a performer, but also working with actors, is to help them navigate our own performer's anxiety about wanting to deliver story or wanting to deliver character, and instead being able to release and sink into the entire composition and recognize that in a positive way, not a negative way, we are one instrument among several that is weaving together to create this composition. So you could almost think of some of what I'm doing in rehearsal with the actors is subtracting or editing or helping them simplify rather than adding things on, because Josh's gorgeous words don't need to be overperformed or added to. You just need to kind of let them, you channel them and then the
Well,
music
that's
sweeps
really
in and out.
interesting. Really, that's really fascinating, Leslie. I like the way you put that. It's like the actor's role with the music. It's like, in fact, different sections in an orchestra, and you
Yes.
settle in to listen to a symphony in a different way as you're making the distinction than you do when you go to a play.
Absolutely.
And you're expecting a plot, you're expecting acts and an intermission.
Yes.
And a denouement.
Yes. And after someone says, "Oh, I've gone to see a play," people will say, "Oh, what was it about?"
Yes, exactly.
But if you say, "I went to the symphony," they don't say, "What was it about?"
Yes, you're right.
You know? So I just feel this is important for your listeners and for our potential audience to know that you will be getting story, you will be getting incident, you will be getting character, but it is more of an experiential, almost like a waltz, or there are different tempos in the different parts. It has a progressive cyclical experience to it instead of being a linear climactic plot structure.
Wow.
This is not organized like an episode of Law and Order.
Right.
You did it. You know, and it is like meditations on a theme or variations on a theme. And I also think of it sometimes as we're adding different colors to the palette as we go through.
Well, that's fascinating and incredibly well put. And I think at this point, maybe we should listen to another clip from it. I
Sure.
want to make sure. I
Sure,
get it
sure,
right this
sure.
time.
Okay.
Let's see, here we go. And you'll be here looking at the picture of the actor Sandy Ferrier, and the clip is from a scene called Berlin.
Old man in an old city.
It's playing.
I walk on cobbled sidewalks, bruised and beaten by centuries of sadness, ancient trees shading apothecaries and booksellers. Streets of pain and surprise and exhaustion and joy. People sit everywhere. They drink and eat, argue and compromise. Stirring their coffee, they read and love and try to avoid the abject cruelty of history, or maybe embrace it. They are the not-so-great movers and shakers, Marxists and fascists, beggars and accountants, stealthy graffiti artists and brash confidence men, lawyers, bakers, and yellow-vested steelworkers, mothers and children, philosophers, Anatolians and East Indians and Africans, the whole world passing.
Anything you'd like to say about the clip people just heard?
I think for me, locations were important for me when I wrote this play. And this last summer, Penny and I visited Vienna and Berlin. Our oldest son lives in Berlin, and it's as a writer, I have to say, it's really fun to evoke a place. It's what set designers often do in theater when we have no set here. So I enjoyed having that evocation. And, to be actually, this was my first trip to Central Europe. So to actually be in Vienna and visit the Musikverein, which is among all great composers, Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Brahms, Bruckner, Mahler, all had music played there, but it was really Brahms's home, to sit there and listen to Penny, who was singing with a choral group at the Musikverein, and to sit underneath the balcony where the director's seat was, where Brahms, that's where he sat. And to you come out, you look across this little park, the Russell Park, and you can see his apartment, his little apartment with rented furniture just right there.
This is hallowed territory.
It truly was. It truly was. And, of course, Berlin was also part of that. So there is one monologue about Vienna and the Musikverein, and this monologue is about Berlin, which is as many cities are its own place, with its own, I hate to use the word vibe, but its own aura, its own atmosphere. And I loved being able to recreate that, and then place it in context of what we're talking about here.
Talking about the body again, there's also an aspect when you're talking about place. People are describing walking, moving through space. So there's that aspect not just of I'm confronted with a vision, but I'm moving through space. And I just mentioned that because that's kind of an actor's way in. That it's not just a narration of an intellectual relationship. I was also just smiling watching Josh talk to you about these locations. You can see that it's an embodied experience for him. And of course, what he's explaining to you is a memory, and that's again what cycles through again and again. Most of these monologues are discussions of memory, not of, oh my gosh, this is happening for the first time now, but I'm reliving this again. And it's an embodied experience as well as a mental experience.
I mean, memories are one of the most profound evokers of emotion.
Yes.
So it all comes together. So, well, we're running out of time for today, but I wonder, I'm curious to find out what each of you hope people who come to experience, and I'm using experience because I think that's the right word here, it's a multimodal sensory experience. What do you hope they'll be touched by or take away from or remember later on about a Modern Requiem?
Well, for me, and I say this all the time, when we leave the theater, as it happens so often, because of course we always go as couples, Penny and I, and we go home and say, well, what did you think about this and what did you think about that? Or outside in the lobby afterwards. What I would really want to hear people say, or think people are saying, is not what did you think about this, but what did you feel about this? That's my goal.
Yeah.
If that happens, then this is a success, I think.
Absolutely, right.
For me, this is a privilege and a tremendous affirmation that we can still, in these times that are so tumultuous and where we walk around not only with our normal to-do list, but with a sense of what do I need to do, what do I need to do, to gather people together, to be in community, celebrating and sharing emotion and making art. It's just a tremendous gift that Josh is giving us of this opportunity to collaborate together and then really collaborate with the audience on having this experience. So I hope people just feel a little bit of they've stepped into a different world and that it leaves them feeling more connected.
Well, both of you put it quite beautifully. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And I'm fortunate I have my tickets already. You do. But just a reminder that Modern Requiem will be performed on Saturday, April 5th at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. and Sunday, April 6th at 4 p.m. at the Space at Zach Field's Drums and Music in Amesbury. And if you want more information or to get tickets, you can get them at Leslie's website, lemonpunchtheaterlab.com/shop/Modern Requiem. And there will also be a clickable link for that website underneath the YouTube version of today's show, which will be available at ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon in the upper right-hand corner, and then go to the morning show, and you'll find the link right under the show. So, gosh, Josh, Leslie, thank you so much. I've learned so much, and I feel like I've had some of the experience already because you both talk so beautifully and clearly about everything from the really fascinating and strange, but complicated relationship among classical music's most famous, I've come to understand, love triangle, but also the romantic sensibility and the kind of genre-stretching form that you've developed with your playwriting. So thank you both very much. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm looking forward to coming to see
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here, always.
Very much my
I'm delighted
pleasure.
to. Thank you so
It
much.
was wonderful to meet you, Leslie. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Please join us again next Thursday at 9 for the morning show. And until then, everybody, please be well.